The unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Well, welcome and thank you all for coming. It's an interesting day to be asked to give a Dharma talk. Last Sunday, we concluded our Jukai retreat. We had 19 in-person new ordinands, and we must have had 10 or 12 older ordinands. And it was of course, it was wonderful to be able to do a Jukai retreat in person. And to me, it's always inspiring, I guess, to see, quote, new people coming and taking the precepts. So I had the honor to give the second talk. Reverend Amanda gave the first one, I gave the second one, and I gave it the afternoon, after the morning when they had actually taken lay ordination. And I talked about the light of the precepts, the light of the precepts. And part of that came out of all the references that I've come across about the precepts being our guiding light. And then there's a verse in our closing ceremony that goes, "The light of the Buddha is increasing in brilliance, and the wheel of the Dharma is always turning." And I thought, wow, the light of the Buddha is increasing in brilliance. Now, how does that happen? Does it happen by itself? We can just stand there and watch it and go, oh, it's getting lighter. Or is there something we need to do? And the combination of that question and all of the ceremonies of Jukai and taking the precepts just yelled at me that we're the one. And it seems so obvious, right? How could I not have thought of this before? We're the one that causes that increase in brilliance. The light of the Buddha will always be there, but we're the ones that cause it to increase in brilliance. And it seemed to me that it was through meditation and vowing to take the precepts, vowing to keep the precepts, vowing to make them our blood and bones, that's what increases the brilliance of the Buddha. And then the thought came up, what comes after the precepts? What comes after the precepts? Well, I talked a lot about what happened for me as a layperson when I took the precepts back in '86. And I asked myself again, well, what happens now? It's been a long time since I've taken the precepts. I've had the good fortune to be a monastic, to be Reverend Master Jiyu's disciple. So what comes now for me? And one of the thoughts that came up is we have to be able to rearrange our life if we're going to follow the light of the precepts. And I found it especially interesting to think about giving a talk on the light of the precepts on Memorial Day. And I found it particularly interesting to be celebrating, if that's the word, Memorial Day in light of the situation in the world today. And after Reverend Master Daishin's dedication and the scripture on Sima's questions, I said, well, that says it all. There's no need for me to give a talk at all, right? That's, covered it all. But I will say this, that for those of you that may not know, I like looking up history. Memorial Day came about after the Civil War. So we've been remembering those who have died in battle for many, many years. And growing up, many, many years ago, I thought that those who died in battle were soldiers who had volunteered out of the goodness of their heart to do what seemed to be the good thing to do. But of course, at least in my memory, since Vietnam, and certainly right now, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people just like you and me, not soldiers, not in the military, children who are dying every day. So it reaffirmed for me that there are two ways to go, probably more, but there are two ways to go. One is total despair. Will we ever change? Will the world ever change? I can't do anything here, living in the monastery in Mount Shasta, to help what's going on in Ukraine. Or we can look toward the teaching that we have as Buddhists and look at, am I putting my whole heart and soul into my meditation? Am I putting my whole heart and soul every day into keeping the precepts? So that's what I'd like to talk a little bit about today. The light is our practice. It's our everyday practice, and we can increase that light or we can decrease it depending on how we lead our daily life. I think that sometimes my life is like a revolving door. I go in at the beginning of the day with the intention of coming out in the evening, having done such and such and such and such, or read such and such. But all I kind of do is go around and around and around, and there doesn't seem to be an out. I'm just kind of circling around. And then there are the swinging doors, which are more straightforward, I think. You just kind of go in, make an effort, and come out on the other side. And what came up for me is it's up to us whether we want to have our day be a revolving door or a swinging door. We want to just repeat all the mistakes that we've made, all of the good intentions that we have that don't come to fruition. Or do we want to say, wait, let me ask for help here. Let me make a show. Let me say the 3 homages. And let me look at what I'm doing right now. I think the precepts are helpful in this regard because they can really ground us. The precepts can provide a center and a centering and a widening of our perspective. So I think precepts are an excellent antidote for our karmic propensities, because that's what the precepts do. They look at our karma and say, oh, you're breaking this precept again. Why are you doing this? Do you want to continue this? For myself, after all these years, why am I still criticizing? Why am I still judging? Well, maybe I do it because I'm so good at it. I've been doing it for so long. But somehow, I think I want to go deeper than that. And when I was looking through, we just recently received a copy of Reverend Leandra's new book, published by Throstle Hole, Birth and Death, and obviously very, very core principles in our Buddhist teaching. And I thought she gave, so I looked in the chapter on Precepts and the chapter on practice. And I thought, gee, she really answers that question, right? What's the karmic connection of the precepts, of our keeping the precepts? So I'm going to read 2 paragraphs to you. There are threads of behavior that have become deeply ingrained between self and other. And I read this particularly thinking about my continued habit of criticizing others, not accepting others, speaking ill of others. It's appalling to realize that I've been practicing for years and years, and I'm still breaking these precepts every day. But that's where it's at. There are threads of behavior that have become deeply ingrained between self and other, deeply ingrained over the years of training together. Slowly, these threads can untangle, but due to habit energy, in quotes, they can loop around again and again if we are not really on the ball spiritually. We can stumble over the loops. A wise master recently described them as imps. We each have our own particular imps, our own particular samsaric feedback loops. And I can think back to being in the world 30 years ago, the way I responded to my family and my friends and my coworkers. So this is not something that's just come up for me as a monastic. This has been with me a long time. And she continues that accepting this, there is a sadness that arises in me, which is both personal and not personal. I bow in gratitude as the sadness arises, as I am being offered the opportunity to take responsibility for all the mistakes I have made and continue to make, in spite of what seems to be my longing to do better. Sound familiar? Surely, she continues, to not blame myself, circumstances, or other people is the pathway of growth and maturation. Surely it leads to a deepening insight into the samsaric web I am weaving through my feelings, thoughts, and actions. Surely thus I see more clearly the karmic consequences that ripple out endlessly. And I'll read the next paragraph to you. Our koans keep revealing themselves again and again, which alerts us to the realization that they are not yet totally converted. And I thought, that's a really optimistic statement, because when my mistakes come up, when oh my goodness, why am I doing this again? I can bow in gratitude that it's coming up and that I recognize it, and I have the choice of continuing or changing it. She continues, as Reverend Master Jiyu said, the highest koans are the precepts. Our attempts to live a moral life in a world such as this one is what makes the koan appear naturally in daily life. The precepts are more than morality. Rather, they are a doorway to profound religious understanding. They help us find the light of Buddha that is always increasing in brilliance, and not to kill it in ourselves or others. When we can refrain from killing Buddha in all the little acts of daily life, goodness will take care of itself. There is a generosity of response that does not depend on rules and regulations. We forget the small self and its self-centered focus on what it feels it needs. And she concludes, perhaps what the small self feels is what it wants rather than what it needs. So I found that very encouraging and helpful. And so out of that question, what comes after the precepts? I try to ask myself frequently throughout the day, am I doing what needs to be done? And when I shine a light on this question, it often reveals that what I'm doing is what I want to do, not necessarily what is good to do. And this has been a real revelation for me. Reverend Master Daishin a few weeks ago gave a lovely Sunday Dharma talk on confidence, humility, and fearlessness. And that has aided, remembering that has aided my approach to putting the precepts foremost in my life and being willing to ask, am I doing what's good to do? Am I doing what I need to do? And I realized that the confidence for me is confidence both in my own ability to change my thoughts, to change my behavior, and also my confidence in this is the way to go. This is a good path to follow. People have been following the precepts for years and years and years. And all I need to do is look around and listen or read the news and see the consequences of breaking the precepts. And while my breakage of the precepts may not be as horrendous as what's going on today, but still, I am sometimes killing the Buddha. I am sometimes defaming the Buddha. I am sometimes demeaning the three treasures. So it's not for me to compare the havoc that I cause and the havoc that's being caused. It's for me to have compassion for whoever is causing the horrors and compassion for those who are enduring the horrors, and to have the humility to say, what can I do about my own self? And to have the humility to ask for help from other members of the Sangha, from the Dharma that I read about, from the teachings that I received from Reverend Master Jiyu. The third aspect that Reverend Master Daishin talked about was fearlessness. And it's not something that I associate with myself, although I have certainly done some crazy things in my life that some people would say was fearlessness and other people would say totally bizarre. But I think we have to put aside the image that we have of ourselves. We have to put aside the identity that we have nurtured, most of us for a good number of years. I don't think any of us here are really very young chickens. And not worry about the fear that comes up, and be confident that we're going to have the courage that comes out of our practice to do what needs to be done. In rearranging our life to promote our practice of the precepts, and I think that's what we need to do. We need to think about rearranging our life. Am I giving enough time and enough effort and enough love to my practice of the precepts? So I decided to start with rereading some of the teachings that I have found helpful from Reverend Master Jiyu, from our Master Daisui. I often go back to Reverend Master Jiyu's teachings in Roar of the Tigris, Volume 1. And during Jukai, I thought, I wonder what she has to say about the precept, particularly about the precept that I find myself still working on, being proud of myself and devaluing others, speaking against others. And this is a paragraph from Roar 1. I used to love gossip at one time, and I can remember that I decided, this is from Master Jiyu, the one I was going to start with was talking about others. And I discovered that for 3 days I didn't say a word, which showed me how much wasted breath I'd been coming out with. And then I started thinking about how to talk to people and about what was truly useful conversation. So you start from the known and you work to the unknown. And by keeping one precept, you end up keeping the whole lot. And you end up knowing the eternal, and that's really what you're out to do. Keeping the precepts allows us to be one with the Buddha nature. It allows us to know the eternal. I went back also to another book that's been helpful to me by the late John Dido Laurie, called Invoking Reality. And it's all about the precepts. It's a very small book, but it's a very large book. So I want to read you just a paragraph that he has to say in the chapter on the moral and ethical teachings of Zen. We live in a time period of considerable moral crisis, with an erosion of values and a fragmentation of meaning prevalent throughout the fabric of the society. The crisis impacts on us personally, as a nation and as a planet. The injuries that we inflict on each other and on our environment can only be healed by sound moral and ethical commitment. And that doesn't mean being puritanical. It doesn't mean being moralistic. These precepts have a vitality that is unique in the great religions. They are alive, not fixed. They function broadly and deeply, taking into account the intricacies and subtleties of conditions encountered. And he continues, there is so much to learn. The precepts are incredibly profound. Don't take them lightly. They are direct, they are subtle, they are bottomless. Please use them. Press up against them. Push them. See where they take you. Make them your own. They are no small thing by any measure. They nourish, they heal, and they give life to the Buddha. And the life that they give to the Buddha is the light that increases in brilliance and that we can have something to do with. I like reminders, and when I was thinking about how can I do better? How can I do better at keeping the precepts? I happened across a book that I had gotten not too long ago. Again, a very small book, and it's called Zen Happiness. It's by John Muth, M-U-T-H. He's an illustrator. I first came across him in the illustrations for a book called Poems to Memorize by Heart by Carolyn Kennedy. And I was so intrigued with his illustrations that I went and looked up what other books he had. And I thought, Zen Happiness. Well, we don't normally think of happiness along with Zazen, but I wanted to see what he had to say. And these were some of the things that he has taken from some of the Buddhist writings. And they're in his own words. And I'm going to read you 6 of them. Be someone you want to be around. And I thought, boy, that says it all, right? That says it about my criticism, my judgment, my anger. And for me, be someone you want to be around speaks to all acceptance, to just accepting whatever situation we're in. It doesn't mean approving of it. It doesn't mean, oh, this doesn't need to change. It just means accepting it. But I really liked be someone you want to be around, and I'm going to work on that one, as I am on all of these. Secondly, he said, what we do now is what matters most. And I thought to myself, you know, Dogen so often says, life is transient. Life is transient. Train as though your hair is on fire. And yet, I find myself putting off something that needs to be done. Saying thank you to someone, writing a letter to someone. I'm so far behind in my correspondence with inmates, it's embarrassing. And that's one of the things I'm going to start doing today. So what we do now, right in this moment, is what matters most. The third thing he says is what we think we can become. And I thought, you know, that works both ways. If we have positive thoughts, that's what is going to come out. And if we have negative thoughts, that's what's going to come out. And our thoughts translate into our speech and into behavior. I mean, this is nothing new. We all know this, right? So what we think is what we can become. His fourth little reminder, be kind to yourself. Whatever you do today, let it be enough. And I thought, well, how many of us have either grown up as children and teenagers or in our workplace, in our career, that we always have to do a little more? Well, in one sense, that's good. Reverend Master Jiyu said, do the best you can, and if you can do a little better, do it. But let us be accepting and content of what we do. Let it be enough, and stop judging ourselves. And I think for me, this is where forgiveness comes in. Can I forgive myself for not being perfect? I mean, my mother wanted me to be perfect when I was very, very young. And I wanted to be perfect as I grew older. And I think somewhere there is, I need to be a perfect monk. But of course I don't. And I can't ever be perfect. Can I forgive myself for not being perfect? Can you forgive yourself for not being perfect? And then next to last, he says, you, as much as anyone in the universe, deserve your love and respect. So, of course, I don't know what goes on in your mind. I often don't know what goes on in my mind, but I don't think of myself as deserving love and respect. And yet, as I look deeper, as I go deeper into the precepts, as I become more willing to look at my own mind, I realize that if I don't love and respect myself, it's going to be very difficult to love and respect other people. And that's what I ultimately want to do, is to be able to accept everyone for who they are, and to love and respect my brother and sister monks, all of you and everyone, everywhere. And last of all, he says, may all beings have happy minds. And I thought, that's like the meta verse, isn't it? You know, may all beings be happy, may all beings be peaceful, may all beings be well. But I never quite thought of it that way. May all beings have happy minds. So to offer merit, not only for ourselves, to offer ourselves love and respect, but to offer merit for those near and those far, those that we don't understand what they're doing. The thought came up for me just before the talk that if I had grown up with Vladimir Putin, if he and I were in elementary school together, and we were friends, right? And then I watched through the years as he started to do what he's doing and has been doing, at least as far as I know, since 1991, I would feel a great sadness, because I would see that this was an individual and he wasn't like this from the beginning. And I would feel very sad that my friend was doing what he's doing now. And I realized that we can feel that empathy with every single person in the world if we wish to offer love and respect to everyone, and if our major wish is may all beings have happy minds. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Thank you all for coming.